So welcome everyone to a bit of a delayed start for session 2 of Across the Curriculum here at Alvin Community College. Today I wanted to, we have two wonderful speakers with us today from Devereux, and they're going to share their expertise in mental health and share how Devereux supports the policy and clinical change that creates a safe space for the LGBTQ community. So we have Dr. Carla Galusha with us today. She is the clinical director at Devereux with 20 years of behavioral health care experience. Just a really comprehensive background from clinical settings, inpatient settings, community-based settings, graduate level teaching, private practice, published in scholarly articles in peer-reviewed journals. And then we have Miss Cindy Townsend. She's the Director of Education at Devereux, and she comes with many years of experience in both teaching as a principal, with working with children K through 12 with a variety of disabilities, and also program development, mentoring teachers. And so between the two of them, they bring a great expertise and background to helping and educating others. And so I look forward to hearing what they have to share with us as far as especially cultural diversity and inclusion, and what they can bring to us that we can use in both our personal and our professional lives. So I turn this over to the two of you.
Thank you, Jennifer, for such a nice introduction. So I'm Carla Galusha, and we're going to start off. Cindy's going to show a video, and then we'll get started with the presentation. But we thought this was a good way to start the intro.
All righty. So y'all just bear with me here. All right. Are we good? Can you see it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
You may write me down in history with your bitter, twisted lies. You may trod me in the very dirt, but still like dust, I'll rise. You may shoot me with your words. You may cut me with your eyes. You may kill me with your hatefulness. But still, like life, I'll rise.
Thank you for sharing that, Cindy. I think that the reason we wanted to share that video is that we wanted to shine a light on just how serious this condition, this situation can be for some of our youth that we serve, and how seriously we as an organization, Devereux, take it. So our presentation today is about meeting the needs of the LGBTQ individuals that we serve here at Devereux.
Carla,
You're muted.
Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Sorry about that. So we're going to start off with talking a bit about Devereux as a whole, and tell you a little bit about our organization and our mission, and then move into talking about some of the challenges and risks that face LGBTQ youth in particular, and identify some ways that Devereux League City has sought to create a safe and supportive environment for those individuals that we serve. So I'm going to talk primarily about the clinical services piece of this, and Cindy is going to speak to how within our school we have also addressed this.
you're muted.
That's so strange that that keeps happening. So a little bit about Devereux and how our organization began. Devereux was started by Helena Devereux, who saw a need for specialized services for children with special needs, and realized that those children were not being served in the way that they required and with the dignity and care that they needed. And so she actually started Devereux back in the early 1900s. So we've been around for about 100 years at this point. From there, with just a little bit of money, she started a school in Pennsylvania, and it has grown throughout the country. And now we're one of the largest behavioral health organizations serving youth in the U.S. So our mission at Devereux is to unlock and nurture human potential for people living with emotional, behavioral, and cognitive differences. And these are some of our core values: compassion, knowledge, collaboration, dedication, learning, and progress.
So real quick, Carla, I don't see your screen.
Oh, good grief.
There we go.
Okay.
Yes.
I apologize for that. Sorry. Okay, so you missed all my previous pretty slides as a result. Can you all still hear me at least, or did I mute myself again?
Yes. We can
Okay.
we can see your slides now, and we can hear you.
Great. Okay. So in Devereux, in 2008, we launched a organizational-wide cultural movement called servant leadership. The idea behind this is that we have a set of values and practices, and we use those to enrich the lives of the individuals that we serve and also of our staff, because it is, in fact, the hardworking staff that we serve that is able to provide these services to our youth and young adults. And this is some photos from the Pride celebration that we hosted earlier this year for our staff and individuals. And this is our service dog, Otis. And he even got into the spirit in his little tie-dyed shirt. Cindy, anything you want to share about that event that we hosted here?
Sure. So this was I'll start with, this was our first Pride Walk that we had on campus. And to be honest, it was met with some mixed mixed responses from both staff and students. I think it was a little bit for the students, you know, I'll be just frank, they were like, well, I'm not gay. Why do I need to do this? I don't identify as part of this community. And so there was a lot of resistance. For staff, it was just kind of maybe uncomfortable for many of them, but still willing to participate. There was a lot of questions and a lot of discussions. It presented a really unique learning and teaching opportunity for us as educators to open up the dialogue, not just within the school setting with their teachers, but also we had groups that were led by their therapists to really have those difficult discussions. What is it that you are uncomfortable with? What about it? What about celebrating diversity, or, you know, with this particular population, do you find that might make you feel uncomfortable? So really having open dialogue, addressing people's concerns, and for some people's fears, for some of the students, particularly boys, that did not identify as part of the LGBTQ community. Well, then will other people think I'm gay if I participate in this event? So we spent a lot of time on the front end, really addressing concerns, addressing questions. And it actually turned out to, I would say, close. Our autism walk was a great one too, but this, for many of the students and staff, came to us afterwards and reported that this was their most favorite event that we've had on campus. And we celebrate diversity through events, you know, throughout the year. So it ended up really having a positive impact for the students that do identify as part of the LGBTQ community, with, you know, building acceptance, building education. And it truly wasn't just a one-day event. It was lifelong lessons for some of the other students and staff as well.
So at Devereux, we have two, here in League City, we have two main areas where we provide services. We have a residential services units that serve adolescents from 14 to 17. And those individuals have complex treatment needs, everything from severe mental disorders to emotional and behavioral disorders, and autism, milder forms of autism in our residential services. And then we have a newly started program that we refer to as the STAIRS program, that is actually a program specifically for those individuals who have autism and intellectual disabilities. So more severe and profound autism spectrum disorder in that program, and that's based on evidence-based autism strategies, primarily applied behavioral analysis. So a little refresher or introduction, if for a few of you, if you're not familiar with it, to some of the LGBTQ terms. We think it's important to educate our staff and the youth that we serve on terms and on using the correct terms and the respectful terms. I will note that transsexual is a term that you will sometimes hear. It's one that you want to avoid unless someone has told you that that is what they prefer to be referred to as. Generally, most individuals will refer to themselves as transgender. It's also important to understand that intersex is a term that is used to refer to a variety of differences, and this has to do with sex traits and reproductive anatomy. So it can include various chromosomal disorders, as well as differences in hormones that make up the group of intersex. The rest of those terms, probably most of you are familiar with. Another area that's important to understand is gender identity. So there's a few different terms here that I think are useful as we talk about this topic. When we talk about sex, we're actually talking about birth assigned sex. So that's can be male, female, or intersex at birth. When we talk about gender, that has to do with our own internal understanding and experiences of our own gender identity. When we talk about gender expression, we're talking about the way in which we present or express our gender. And in that case, the best way to understand gender expression is to ask. If you're unsure of whether someone prefers to be to identify as male or female or non-binary, and what pronouns or name they prefer to use, the best way to approach that is to just ask them. And oftentimes you can do that by introducing yourself and sharing your own preferred pronouns and then asking them what theirs are. And gender perception is how we're perceived by others. So that's the one where we really don't have any control over that. And it certainly can have an impact on how we feel about ourselves, or certainly how youth might feel about themselves if they're perceived in a way that's different from how they choose to express or how they feel about themselves internally. When we talk about pronouns, in the last few years, this has really expanded. And I think this is a place where many times people feel somewhat uncomfortable, not necessarily knowing correct pronouns. And again, this is where I would suggest asking someone to confirm their name and the pronouns that they use. But these here are listed for you so that you can see different pronouns people may prefer. Typically, she, he, they are the most common, but there are others that individuals prefer, like they tends to be the preferred pronouns of individuals who identify as non-binary. There's also a gender neutral option for identifying someone with an honorific. So an honorific is like the respectful titles such as Mr., Ms., Miss, and you can use MX for that if you're unsure of gender, age, or marital status, or that may be the preferred honorific someone might identify if they prefer a gender neutral title. One of the reasons this is important is that individuals report actually a 29% decrease in suicidal ideation and a 56% decrease in suicidal behavior when others use their chosen name and pronouns. So it's important. It has a direct impact on how individuals feel about themselves. Anything you want to add there, Cindy?
No, and I think it's also important to, like you said, ask. And I have conversations with my students quite frequently, because with some of our kids, they're still pretty confused, and so their preferences may change from day to day. They sometimes change multiple times within the same day, which always makes that interesting. But yeah, I mean, it was, I'll be honest, from my personal experience at first, because my background was really working with students with autism and just behavioral difficulties, not necessarily, we did not have, and it was at younger levels, lower levels, so I did not have a whole lot of experience. So at first I was a little uncomfortable having those conversations with my students, whereas now it rolls off the tip of my tongue. But even acknowledging when you slip up, because that happens too. And particularly with the students that may change frequently, but even giving them that validation of, I caught myself, I think goes a long way.
Yes, absolutely. So one of the things that we recognize at Devereux is that emotional well-being, that our emotional health really involves the whole person. So it is not just the mental and physical health of the individual, but also particularly for youth, family relationships that have a very profound impact on the children that we serve. And many times in families of individuals who identify as LGBTQ, those family relationships are sometimes fractured or strained because of differences in beliefs and understanding. For many youth, their families some or all of their family members are unwilling to use their preferred name and pronouns, or will frequently make statements that are derogatory around their preferred pronouns and name, and also some of those ingrained homophobic beliefs that are perhaps espoused by family members become internalized for the youth. So we find that even individuals who identify as LGBTQ oftentimes voice a lot of that internalized negativity about who they are and what they deserve, and how their life is likely to turn out in the future. It's also important to meet the educational needs of those that we serve, obviously, and that's a large piece of the care and services that we provide here at Devereux. All of our youth spend a good portion of their day year-round in the academic school setting. All of our teachers are special education certified teachers, and also receive additional training in areas related to mental health and cultural diversity and sensitivity. We also are attuned to the physical health and well-being of our individuals, identity and peer relationship issues, and we talk a lot about that in our coursework and in our therapeutic interventions. And then we have recreational activities, art activities, spirituality activities that also encompass that. Some statistics. The Trevor Project, which many of you may be familiar with, conducts an annual survey looking at attitudes, beliefs, and opinions of LGBTQ youth. And the most recent survey in 2021 found that 42% of youth endorsed having recently considered suicide and seriously considered it. 70% endorsed having mental health concerns, including a large percentage who reported experiencing symptoms of generalized anxiety disorder and major depressive disorder. 75% reported that they had experienced discrimination based on their sexual orientation or gender identity at least once throughout their lifetime. And 80% reported increased stress. We know that in youth that identify as LGBTQ typically endorse higher rates of stress and familial conflict than do other youth. But in particular, in relation to COVID-19 and people typically having to spend more time at home over the last few years, 80% reported increases in the stress levels in their home life and home situation. So in light of all of that, how do we go about creating a safe place for our students? And I think it's important to note that we're not concerned just with creating a safe place for those that identify as LGBTQ, but as Cindy said, we do try to celebrate diversity in a variety of ways. And I think in particular, our school really leads across campus in doing some of this. So I'm going to let her talk a little bit about how she and her staff have tried to create a safe place within the school and throughout our campus.
Sure. So what we've learned and what research tells us is that aesthetics are huge in terms of how we process our environment, how we feel physically, mentally. So we do focus in the school a lot on aesthetics. I've been blessed with the best art teacher on the planet Earth, I feel. I'm a little biased, but I think so. So she works with the kids as well as the other teachers, just creating activities that are educational in nature, but also just pretty to look at. as well as really creating the environment that everyone is accepted. Again, not just people that identify as the LGBTQ community, but just diversity as a whole. We focus a lot on letting people know it's okay to be different. We don't have to be afraid to be different. We can celebrate differences and very creative artistic outlets that are also very therapeutic in nature. Some of our students that are a little more comfortable expressing themselves, you'll see portraits of themselves, and of course that's optional, and they'll have sayings on how their feelings have how they've progressed through therapy, and they're okay sharing their stories with each other too. So it's just an environment of really focusing intentionally on creating a safe space for the students to learn. Aside from art, we also have different types of committees within the school setting, as well as on the units. And just, I realized when Carla said in the school building, for those of you guys, I don't know, I think probably most of you have not been here. We're just under 50 acres and we have 11 buildings on campus, and the school is just one of them. And the units are where the students live. So if you hear us use those words, that's what we're referring to. I lost my train of thought. Okay, so groups. So yes, we do have groups and committees that focus on celebrating diversity, and also giving the students power of choice is huge in terms of the events that we plan. Simple things as even like, or what may seem simple to us, when we have dances, if a male student identifies as transgender, helping the student get the correct clothes. So if we need to go to stores with them, take them shopping, and make it a safe space for them to feel comfortable expressing themselves externally through their clothing of choice, if you will. Another thing we focus a lot on is really modeling that behavior ourselves, not just by being appropriate role models, but also creating a diverse working environment, so the students are able to see a diverse group of people that they can identify with. So that's very intentional on a part as well.
And I think one of the other things that we have tried to focus on, the idea of cultural competence or competency has really been pushed, I think, in recent years. That's been something that's important. But I actually prefer the idea of cultural humility, which is the stance that, even if you and I are both from Texas, your experience and your culture might be very different from mine. So I am not the expert on you, even if I know a lot about Texan culture or I know a lot about having British ancestry or something like that. That doesn't make me an expert on you. You're really the expert on you, and that I should look to you to educate me about your culture and your beliefs. So taking that stance of allowing others to educate us about who they are and what their beliefs are. And then we also focus a lot on anti-bullying. And I think that goes hand in hand with even how we interact with one another as staff. So we model that as well. We don't treat each other disrespectfully. We don't treat the students disrespectfully, and we require that in the way that they treat one another as well. So some tips for increasing inclusivity at your school or even at your environment. One is to start a gay straight alliance organization at your school. And I believe Cindy said it, they have had that previously here. I think it may have stopped, but briefly, do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, COVID is kind of, we had to kind of be aggressive in terms of mixing students, of course, to try to maintain health and limit the spread of COVID. So that's been a challenge, but we're hoping to get the Gay Straight Alliance back up and running soon. The struggle that we have now is really just mixing student groups, and if it's just 2 people, doesn't feel like inclusive of the whole campus wide vibe that we're going for. But it's made up of staff as well as students. It's voluntary, and it is exactly what it sounds like, Gay Straight Alliance. So we plan activities and groups and educational presentations and those sorts of things throughout the year for students, both straight and LGBTQ community, to have their voices heard, give them a platform. We focus a lot on teaching self-advocacy skills, as well as advocacy for those that may not be like them. Yes, and I think we've covered pronouns and names.
Yeah. And I think just one of the things that we are not afraid to do here, probably because we're made up, so many of us are teachers and mental health professionals, is talk about uncomfortable topics and discomfort. So when things come up that are clearly uncomfortable, we talk about it, and sometimes probably talk it to death. But we discuss those things both amongst ourselves and with our students. Because it is important for them to be able to bring up these topics and talk about them. So we do talk about it, we process it, and if students or if someone says something that is offensive, incorrect, or impolite, we do correct that. Sometimes people will just kind of smile or shake their head at things that are said that are offensive or hurtful, because they're concerned or afraid to correct it. And I think that we do a good job of not doing that. We will go ahead and correct it. We'll do it politely, but we will correct it. So some other things that can be done to provide supports are regular check-ins with trusted staff. We are blessed with some really talented direct care staff, as well as clinical and teaching staff, and we interact with each other quite a bit to discuss who maybe has particular rapport with certain individuals, and to make sure that if we're observing anyone is perhaps maybe not acting like they usually do, or is new, or maybe feeling excluded, that we have staff that checks in on that person regularly. So we're constantly and continuously checking in with the individuals that we serve. We have policies and procedures that dictate how we interact with the individuals that we serve, and that direct us on how to be sensitive to diversity issues. And we make sure that our staff are aware of those policies and procedures. And in fact, that's part of what Cindy spoke to with educating staff prior to the Pride events. We're regularly talking about that. I mean, to be fair, in the last 15, 20 years, the way that we've handled these types of issues has changed a lot. And not everyone is as up to date as others, and not as many people are educated. And so we try to be sensitive to that as well, and provide education and information, both as part of our orientation to new staff, and then as regular in-service trainings throughout the year. And that's part of our professional development. One of the initiatives that we're currently working on is something called I Empathize, which is a program that is being rolled out to all of our teachers and with the support of our clinicians. Do you want to talk about that a little bit, Cindy?
Sure. So it's really you hear me talk about teaching people how to advocate for themselves, and the big piece of that is embedded in this program. Let's a little bit of it's designed more for adolescents. So for our students in our autism IDD school, it's not really appropriate for them at this time. It's looking a lot at teaching children and teens. It looks at like sexual exploitation, how to stop that before it starts. For the teachers, it's really, and we're just rolling this out, but it's a lot about prevention, advocacy, how to recognize and how to respond to potentially problematic, scary, dangerous situations, and really getting in there and stopping it before they start.
And we provide, you know, gendered facilities and activities, as well as non-gendered and gender neutral options for our kids. We have a fairly flexible dress code. We have some obviously some dress code requirements in order to protect modesty and you know, not allowing rips in places that would be overexposing or anything like that. But we do allow the youth to dress in a way that is comfortable for them and is consistent with their gender expression. And that is pretty much all we have for today. Any questions or comments, anything further that you would want to add, Cindy, about our services here or the things that we've done to try to create a more diverse and safe, supportive environment for our learners?
No, I don't think I have anything else to add. I'd say that a big focus again is really educating and having conversations that might be difficult for others, and creating a space where it's okay for them to ask questions. And you made a good point. 20 years ago, things looked much differently. So sometimes people just may not know the answers, the adults and the staff, or maybe innocently or through naivety are saying something that they don't know is offensive. So just having the dialogue and not being afraid to do that. Does anyone have questions, thoughts, feedback? Was this helpful?
Absolutely. Are there any questions that anybody has for Carla or Cindy? I had a question on the Pride Walk and these things that you tend to do and host at Devereux. Are these just for the residents? Are there opportunities or things that you plan for the community to be part of?
So we have had events where definitely where the community has been invited. Right now with COVID, of course, you know, we're not able to do that as in the way we would like to. The Pride event was just for our students, but that was during COVID. And we had our campus in Victoria also participated as well, and we were able to stream it to each other, but we did not have community members at that event. But other events certainly, and hopefully the numbers will continue to decrease with COVID, and we can get back to that normal, because community involvement is a huge piece. We also partner with the local law enforcement, and they would come on campus and do fun things with the kids as well.
Okay, that's good to know. So even, I know Alvin Community College is in, kind of within the surrounding community. So we would enjoy to be part of that and receive that information so that our faculty and staff and even students know that there is something, other things that they can participate in addition to what we provide and are doing on campus.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that would be wonderful. As we do have a group called Friends of Devereux. That is a group of volunteers that historically have been very involved in the campus. And hopefully as we kind of, fingers crossed, return to some normality, we'll be able to do more of those types of things.
Okay, I do have one last question. You mentioned this new program that's kind of rolling out that you are I guess engaging with more. It's called I Empathize. Is that something that you all are developing, or is that a program that you have adopted that has shown to be effective based on research?
That's correct. Yeah, we did not adopt that one. It is actually a corporate initiative.
Okay. All right. Well, that is questions that I had for you all. Any other questions? Or is there, I can share your contact information in the chat if anyone has any questions about any of the information. Is there a specific contact that you would like me to post in the chat for others, or your information's on the Devereux website on how to reach out to anybody about the services that are offered? Any of the services or activities that you talked about? Is the website, the Devereux web page, a good place to go for that?
Yes.
Yes, yeah, that's a great place for people to go.
Okay. Well, I thank you so much for just your leadership in this initiative, and, you know, educating, and the investment that Devereux has made into providing just a culturally diverse environment, one for both its employees and the residents there, all of the adults and children and those in the community that you support, and really just trying to set a good example and kind of soften this, you know, and you know, how individuals are treated, and just being more supportive. And I think you mentioned modeling, other things that you said, you know, hosting these events and doing these things. It's, you know, a single event, but it's lifelong lessons and lots of takeaways that we can use in our day-to-day life, in a professional environment, and a personal one. So I appreciate that, and I thank you so much for your leadership and your time and your expertise today. So I appreciate you very much.
Thank you for having us.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, everyone take care. I'll go ahead and stop the recording. And I believe that